your trusted source for news in western Nebraska and eastern Wyoming. This is KNEB.TV News. Presented by Platte Valley Companies, premier provider of financial services.
Hello, I'm Ryan Murphy. This is KNEB.TV News, powered by Platte Valley Companies. Thanks for joining me. In our top story, what could have been a simple shoplifting offense has turned into 2 felony charges for a brazen Scottsbluff criminal. 29-year-old Jacob Godina was arrested on June 8th after allegedly stealing a cart full of beer and other items from Walgreens. On his way out, he threatened the life of one of the employees if she said anything. Scottsbluff police officers located him just a block away and brought him back to the store. Since this was his third offense of shoplifting, he's facing a Class 4 felony charge of shoplifting, in addition to a Class 3A felony charge of terroristic threats. He's currently being held on a $21,500 bond and will be back in court on June 23rd for his preliminary hearing and bond review. Well, the Nebraska Department of Transportation, in partnership with the Nebraska State Patrol and local first responder agencies, will host a live traffic incident management exercise at the Western Nebraska Regional Airport tomorrow morning. This exercise is a planned approach to detect, respond to, and clear traffic incidents. It gives emergency responders and those supporting operations a better understanding of best practices. Emergency responders, towing and recovery professionals, and NDOT District 5 leadership and staff will come together to work through unique scenarios pertaining to crashes on roadways. The exercise will begin tomorrow at 8 a.m. And the Nebraska Public Power District wants to let customers in Terrytown and Scottsbluff to be aware of some work that will be done near power lines over the course of the next week or so. NPPD Distribution Line Superintendent Dennis Wademan tells KNEB News to be on the lookout for crews.
First of all, they'll just be over there assessing, but then eventually the tree trimmers will be there doing the tree trimming for the lines at Nebraska Public Power. And then next week, they'll be in the Scottsbluff area.
This routine maintenance occurs when NPPD identifies trees in its service territory that need to be trimmed around power lines and has them trimmed as seen fit at no cost to the customer. We'll have more news right after this.
Whether you're gardening, searching for the perfect vacation home, or planning your next travel destination, your life is just as unique. Your Raymond James financial advisors, Jody Rosiska and Kevin Figg, get to know you, your passions, and your vision for the future, so you can live your life. That's life well planned.
When it comes to your health, you deserve the very best. At Morrill County Community Hospital, they provide top-notch care with compassion and expertise. From routine checkups to advanced surgeries, their dedicated team is here for you 24/7. With state-of-the-art technology and a patient-first approach, they ensure you and your loved ones receive the highest quality care. Because at Morrill County Community Hospital, your health is their priority. Visit Morrill County Community Hospital today in Bridgeport. Morrill County Community Hospital. Exceptional care right here at home.
Fly United Airlines, operated by SkyWest with Western Nebraska Regional Airport. United is dedicated to going the extra mile for you with daily flights to and from Denver, along with a commitment to excellent service. Reserve your flight today, and remember, United miles can be earned and redeemed with your flights. While at the airport, stop and enjoy authentic Italian food at Roma Italian Restaurant. Plus, Hertz Thrifty Car Rental is there for your car rental needs. Make life easier, relax, and get on board with Western Nebraska Regional Airport.
Welcome back. Work is underway for the Twin Cities to play host to the Beef, Beans, and Bluegrass Festival. During this week's Scottsbluff City Council meeting, Festival President Amy Westfall spoke as she sought to get a permit to block off the main stretch of Broadway.
Last year went well. We had about 6,500 people there. And so the street, she just listed that, and I thought I was going to have to tell you all about it. We are just asking if we can shut streets down again this year and be able to host our festival in the plaza and on the streets downtown Scottsbluff.
Tammy Cooley with Bacharachs was also approved for a liquor license to serve beverages during the Saturday, August 23rd event. Last year featured a large variety of vendors selling everything to jellies and jams, handcrafted items, and more. The 3-day festival will kick off Friday night at the Weborg 21 Center with a catered beef meal and live bluegrass band, and concludes Sunday with music, food, and games at Frank Park in Scottsbluff. Well, June 20th is the summer solstice, the longest day of the year that has the most amount of daylight. On that day, thousands of participants from across the world come together to fight the darkness of Alzheimer's. Runs of restaurants will be doing their part to help find a cure, as they'll be donating 10% of all sales today to the Alzheimer's Association. The hope is to raise funds and awareness for the care, support, and research efforts of the Alzheimer's Association.
Welcome to Kelly's Liquor, your liquor cabinet. Whether you're a wine enthusiast, a whiskey sommelier, a tequila connoisseur, or you just love your beer, Kelly's has the best selection of what you're looking for. Family owned and operated since 1946 and right on 27th Street in Scottsbluff. Come see us today at Kelly's Liquor, your liquor cabinet. And remember to be a good neighbor. Don't drink and drive. Kelly's Liquor, West 27th Street in Scottsbluff.
I imagined retirement in a place where we could enjoy our golden years, where adventure and friendship are the only items on the schedule. The Garden Homes at Northfield gives us the luxury we planned for and peace of mind when it comes to convenience, safety, and comfort. We never have to stop and think about the day-to-day upkeep. We love to explore abroad, but most importantly in our backyard. So much to do, so much to see. Here at Northfield, we get the protection of life care, incredible tax benefits, and secured rates for aging services. It's peaceful, knowing that if our needs change, we'll be taken care of. And most importantly, that our kids will never have to make any tough decisions. There never seemed to be enough time to do all the things we wanted. Now we get to focus our energy on enjoying what this community has to offer. At the Garden Homes, life is ours again. A place we had dreamed about. A chance to focus on us.
There's a lot of uncertainty in the cattle markets these days from a couple of different fronts. And last week we saw that spread between the North and the South narrow up just a little bit. What does that mean for this week's trade? Well, we'll get into that and more during this week's Cattle Call. I'm Chad Moyer. Cattle Call, a production of the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. It is brought to you by Wolf Auto, Small Town Strong. On today's program, we're joined by Joe Koima and Varalik there at Sioux Center, Iowa. Well, Joe, let's start with last week's trade. I mentioned it in the opening comments. Yes, that range between the North and the South narrowed up a little bit. Give us, what did we learn last week? What were kind of the highlights in last week's cash trade?
You know, the highlights. So thanks for having me on this afternoon and filling in for Brad. But a great leadoff question there. Obviously, it's something we watch week to week. You know, when the North continues to have a big shot over the cash in the South, that tells you just how good this market is with the lack of numbers up here and the negotiation that we have up here as well. But we did see a little bit of I'm not really going to call it a slip necessarily, but yeah, 235 in the country in the South, some 238 here and there on some of those video ones. But yeah, the South or the North, I would call it just a touch weaker on basically the lack of trade. So we're still very current up here. The availability is slim, but we did have some 240 cash happen last week. So have a little bit of a slip with that. And when we talk about the leverage, it's always a superbly fine line. So we don't always want to give it up necessarily, but it's a market here where we can't do any better with the futures. So you kind of have to take what you got out there, and it's still a huge price to have. My mindset, you know, when we have a little bit of a lower market in the cash market, is that the futures market, not necessarily me, or us, it's more of the general feel in the marketplace is that, okay, if we slipped a little bit in cash this week, that's going to be kind of the lack of a better word, the momentum going into this week's trade. And Monday we kind of got it back together. We took some of that uncertainty away from the prior week about some of those ICE raids happening in the market. Bounced quite nice because it's a big discounted structure, but then we have the uncertainty of the geopolitical stuff that stabbed us pretty hard yesterday. So unfortunately that cash market is still yet to be entirely discovered. We're maybe hearing of some steady stuff a little bit. Yesterday, some 235 in Kansas, but we're also hearing some 235 in Nebraska for a couple weeks out. Once again, that's a huge price to have, and the futures market had a pretty tough day yesterday. So we're all nervous up here at these high prices. We're nervous with all the other stuff kind of going around us.
Yeah. So let's unpack a little bit more about that. What you said, because the totals from last week, especially in the North, were down a little bit from the last couple of weeks. And notice there wasn't much for deferred delivery either. What do you make of that? Is that a shift in psychology, or is that just a reflection on what's actually available, Joe?
It can be kind of a double-edged sword. So to say, it's going to be kind of difficult to unpack necessarily, but yeah, the fundamental at heart of mine is saying that, yeah, we're super current. We don't have cattle that are available. We want something out 2-3 weeks just to get a little bit more weight on them. The other thing though too is that the more the Packers kind of do this, they grab some stuff a couple weeks out. They're up to something. They're trying to get some cattle around them, and we're coming up on a holiday tomorrow, a few weeks out from the July 4th holiday too. So if they can get some cattle around them, they're going to do that to kind of suppress the fundamentals here and suppress that cash market just a little bit.
Okay. Well, let's go into our listener and viewer questions. And just before we do that, just a huge shout out to the folks that have been watching and listening to the cattle call here. Just had a great week this last week. So continue. Thanks for being with us here. Thanks for following along, and let your friends and neighbors and others on your social media channels, let them know about this, because this is really good information. We appreciate the expertise of these guys. Let's go in and into our first question here, which again kind of talks a little bit about psychology of the market. How is their confidence to to be able to market ahead of time? Here's the question. With the discounted futures market, trading at a certain level, you've got cash $30 above that. How much of a risk is it really to remain open on cattle with this much of a discount in futures?
Great question. And to answer that, it's a lot. And you can see the question there with next April at 212 and the cash $30 above that. Well, now I'm looking at a screen where April cattle's at 208. So it's still, a big discount there. So it's a ton of risk to have on. The other thing about a futures market is that it will, I'm not saying this to send alarms out that things need to be done now, but a futures market will typically peak at the highest price before the tightest numbers get there, if that makes sense. So the risk is very large in this environment, especially with all the amount of money spent on these critters right now. So kind of went through a little bit of a 101 there, that it's a big risk, and it makes things difficult on our end to try to come up with some kind of a strategy. We're kind of buy puts, maybe you got to buy puts in a different month just to have something on, just in case we do have a deeper correction there. So, but going out that far to April it's a big venture. It's more capital just to come up with some kind of a floor there. So we've been trying to just buy some puts up front that we can live with and kind of get through this uncertainty right now.
All right. The next question that we have has to do with, what's happening boots on the ground. What are you receiving for your cattle versus what you see in the grocery store? And again, the question here, why is the price I receive for my calves not really reflected in the store? This person's individually feels like, well, with what I'm getting for my calves, a pound of hamburger should be around $10. Explain how that works. It's not necessarily a 1-for-1, is it, Joe?
No, and it's a good question to kind of try to break down here a little bit. We kind of look at it as let's view it as a pie chart, and that pie chart is labeled margins. So you have the packer margins, the producer margins, and the retail margins, right? That graph is always fluctuating as far as who's getting a bigger margin and who's getting the least margin. Back during COVID, us producers got zilch, basically, and the packer was taking a lot of it, and then the retailer still had some left over there. But now that pie chart has shifted to a big degree where the leverage is in the producer's hand right now. So we are taking the big part of that margin. The packers have some little, not as much as they had before, and the retailers still doing what they're doing as far as getting their margin throughout that product there. So we're all after that same margin. It's just a constant shift, and depends what part of the market cycle that we're in now. So just because the price is high, it still has to trickle who's getting the most there. But a constant variable of who's getting which. But like we said earlier, we got the leverage here in the producer's paw, and that's where it's at currently.
Yep. All right. Now here's another question, and it's somewhat related, I would say, maybe takes a little different angle on it, and it brings in the idea of food inflation. The country has dealt with inflation for a while. It's backing off a little bit, but we had that big jump. So I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but it just says, how does the administration plan on cutting inflation with higher food prices? And then something else that created a bunch of uncertainty. We talked about that last week with the ICE investigations and things like that. In this listener's opinion, that doesn't help much either. So, how do you come at these costs from that direction, Joe?
Right. I think these are maybe just little news stories that just kind of show up. It's not our first time having that dialogue of what's going on out there. But I don't know if we're really going to see a whole lot of that raiding food plants necessarily moving forward there. But this one gets a little bit up there as far as how far I dare comment necessarily. But I think give us a week, we'll probably forget about something like this. And I don't know. I hope we don't ever have to go back to it. But that would be my take home message. That we had this before back in, I can't remember, it was February, March, and now we're having it again. And we kind of, that news dissipated quite quickly after that. And if this does happen, like this week, I think there's a few places that are going to have an extra kill just to kind of make up for something like that. So as long as it's not an ongoing thing, I believe things will be fine. So.
All right. Again, thanks to the listeners and viewers for submitting those questions. Make sure you go down in the comments and put in their question. We'll pick a couple to answer on next week's Cattle Call. And while you're down there, go ahead and click that alert button. That'll let you know when the next Cattle Call comes out, so you don't miss it. So go ahead and click that when you're down there as well. Joe, let's talk about this week's trade. Seeing just a little bit of trade. You alluded to it here in Nebraska. Some 235 lives being reported. Some 376 on a dressed basis. I guess, how is the rest of this week's cattle call this week's cattle trade kind of setting up?
It looks just softer, just generally softer. I mean, you have a marketplace that's up one day and down the next, but we're in a little bit of a mini downtrend here, unfortunately. And it's not necessarily like a scare tactic, but when you see the market drop with no reflection of fundamentals, you're going to have this kind of trade happen. But these are still huge prices to have. We don't have markets tomorrow, and we have another, just Friday and then another weekend. So it's almost like we have 2 weekends here right now. That's just driving, this marketplace that maybe they don't want to carry positions into tomorrow because of the uncertainty overseas. And then you got another weekend, literally just one day of trade, and then another weekend to have some of that overall worry with the uncertainty. So having these cash prices where they're at, you got to search for me. You got to find them. It's a big price. And if you look at the board, man, we can't do anything better than what's available out there. So, stay light on your feet here a little bit. I would still stay, very cautious. We have a money flow situation. I mean, we can obviously talking about fundamentals right now, but these funds have come out of a lot of length, and it doesn't take much of an uncertain situation for them just to bow out and say, I'm just going to take my money there. So stay cautious here. The fundamentals are there, but unfortunately they're just kind of in the backseat with this money flow going on.
Yeah. Joe, with your prior comments where you said we were so current, especially here in the North, would it be logical to say maybe we can avoid some of that panic selling, like if you get a soft week like this? How do you think the psychology is going to be over the next few weeks?
Psychology is always one of the things to really overcome in a big way. Let's not, take the first bid that we're given. Let's kind of call around and see what's really going on. But it still goes back to the producer. And if these are big numbers, you just kind of have to take them. And we're current, and we're gonna probably be that way. Let's not make this not necessarily a mess, but take what you can do. Move cattle and just keep that program going on. Because the moment we start saying, no, I don't want to sell at that cash price, and the next week it drops lower, then all of a sudden you kind of get a little bit of a backlog. So do what you got to do, stay current, get some price floors underneath them and move on.
All right. Very good. We'll put up the contact information for folks that would like to reach out to you guys there in Sioux Center, Iowa. Phone number is 712-722-0023. Joe, it's been good to have you on the air with us here today. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Again, that's Joe Koima, and Varlick at Sioux Center, Iowa. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Cattle Call program. Again, today's program is brought to you by Wolf Auto, Small Town Strong. Put your comments and questions in the comments below. And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you on next week's Cattle Call right here.
Your home deserves a better hello. Swing into summer with a brand new entry or patio door. Get 20% off every door plus no money down, no payments, and no interest for 12 months. Enjoy an extra 5% off your entire project if purchased on initial consultation. That's up to 25% in savings on an upgrade your home will thank you for. But hurry, these hot summer deals won't last long. Call today or visit rbawyoming.com to book your free estimate.
Let's take a peek at your weekend community calendar brought to you by Riverstone Bank. The community calendar is brought to you by Riverstone Bank. We're local and we love our community.
You deserve to have a building that will last for generations. With more than 110 years of experience and thousands of satisfied customers, Morton Buildings is the industry leader you can trust. If you're planning for a garage, farm shop, horse barn, storage building for your RV, boat, or collectibles, there's no better time to buy. Contact your local Morton sales office or visit mortonbuildings.com to get started today.
At Platte Valley Bank, we want to help you take advantage of every adventure. We know you have plans, goals, and dreams. Let us help you with them. Whether it is building, buying, or renovating, we have the home loan or home equity line of credit to fit your needs. Stop in and see us at Platte Valley Bank and let us help make your dreams a reality. You belong here. Platte Valley Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
And before we break for the weekend, the Morrill Pool will be the place to be this afternoon as the community is invited for a fun-filled day. Platte Valley Bank is again hosting the Summer Bash, which will feature swimming, games, contests, and more. New this year will be live music with Avid Discord providing tunes for the masses from 5 to 8 p.m. The pool will be open for free swimming from 1 until 7, with a coin dive at 4, splash contest at 4:30, and this year's giveaway winner being announced at 7 p.m. Food trucks will be on hand for people to buy a snack or dinner from 4 to 7 p.m. Well, that does it for us this time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.